Imagine for a moment that everything you've believed about God, reality, and the meaning of existence may be nothing more than a carefully maintained construction to keep you from ever approaching the truth. Think of the unsettling feeling of realizing that the images venerated in temples, the symbols repeated throughout the centuries, and even the words echoing in sacred texts may be nothing more than veils, shadows cast on invisible walls that obscure your vision of the true source of the divine. It's as if the entire world were created to look the wrong way, outward, when the key has always been within. This idea alone would be enough to shake any conviction. But when Nikola Tesla dared to suggest that the essence of God is found not in dogma, but in energy, frequency, and vibration, he wasn't just presenting a new scientific theory. He was inviting humanity to tear down the very foundations of its worldview. Tesla spoke neither as a preacher nor as a prophet. He spoke as someone who, in his intellectual and spiritual isolation, dared to listen to the silence between the electrical discharges. For him, each spark, each resonance, each magnetic field was a reminder that the universe is not a cold mechanism, separate from us, but a living, pulsating organism connected on multiple invisible levels. What we call matter is not solid, not fixed, not definitive. It is vibration, incessant movement. And if everything vibrates, if everything resonates, what does this mean for the way we conceive of God himself? Here lies the first micro-conflict. Our mind wants certainties, stable images, ready-made answers. It wants God to be a name, a figure, a fixed point in the sky. But Tesla said this desire is like trying to bottle the storm, to imprison electricity in words. The divine, he asserted, is flux. There is a profound provocation in this perspective. If God is not outside, if he is not a separate entity, if he is not a figure who decides destinies from a throne, but the very energy that permeates every atom, then who are we? And further, why do we insist on creating anthropomorphic images, complex rituals, and doctrinal discourses to convince ourselves that we are close to the sacred, when perhaps we are only fueling the distance? Tesla understood this paradox better than anyone. Isolated in his creative solitude, often ridiculed by his contemporaries, he realized that the true temple was never in cathedrals or institutions, but in the human body, in the human mind, in the heart that beats in resonance with the stars. But this thought is uncomfortable. It confronts us, because accepting that God vibrates within us also means accepting an immense responsibility. We are part of the field. We are transmitters and receivers. We are indispensable notes in a symphony that cannot be interrupted. What if, instead of seeking intermediaries, we dared to directly feel the vibration of the divine? What would this do to the structure of religions, systems of power, and traditions that depend on our belief in a distant God? This is the open wound that Tesla touched, albeit indirectly. It's not just science, it's existential subversion. Consider this. Every time you repeat a prayer mechanically, every time you look outside yourself for a sign, every time you believe the answer lies in something external, aren't you reinforcing the illusion that keeps the curtain in place? Tesla realized that the human mind, out of fear of silence, invents symbols. And symbols, though useful, end up becoming chains. They don't reveal the essence, they only hide it. It's like trying to define infinity with a word. The word can point but never contain. And yet, we cling to words, to names, to forms. Why? Because the idea of plunging into the void is frightening. Tesla was not frightened by emptiness. On the contrary, he sought it. For him, solitude was not absence, but opportunity. Silence was not emptiness, but presence. While others saw electricity merely as a mechanical force, he saw it as a metaphor for the mind, the spirit, and the universal vibration. He needed no dogma, because he understood that the universe itself was already the greatest sacred book ever written, and that its language was not the alphabet, but frequency. Every ray, every wave, every magnetic pulse was a sentence of this cosmic scripture. Now ask yourself, if God is vibration, if the essence of everything is movement, what does this say about our fixed beliefs, our rigid systems, our immutable concepts? Isn't this attempt to freeze infinity the very root of our anguish? It's no wonder Tesla was marginalized. His words threatened an entire system. By saying that the universe is alive, conscious, and resonant, he was also saying that we don't need mediators to access it. This amounts to taking power away from institutions and returning it to the individual. It's a liberating gesture, but also a dangerous one. The question that arises is, why are we so afraid to accept the idea that we carry the divine spark within us? Perhaps because doing so would place us before the responsibility of creating our reality, rather than merely consuming it. Tesla didn't see the mind as passive, but as transmitter. He didn't speak of asking God, but of attuning to Him. He didn't speak of supplication, but of harmony. If this is true, then aren't all the spirituality we know, rituals, meditations, mystical practices, just different paths to achieving the same frequency of harmony that Tesla recognized in electrical phenomena? And here, another reflection arises. When monks describe states of light, when mystics speak of absolute love, when meditators report the dissolution of the self, aren't they all accessing the same vibration that Tesla saw in his electrical discharges? The difference is that he translated it into science, while others translated it into spiritual symbols. But the field is the same. This is at once beautiful and disturbing, because it forces us to reconsider whether the reality we see is truly reality, or merely a provisional construction, a mask for something our minds cannot yet bear. Modern neuroscience speaks of perceptive filters, of mind interfaces that simplify reality so we can survive. Tesla, more than a century ago, already intuited this. For him, what we call reality is merely a vibrational reflection, a limited spectrum of something much greater. What we call God, perhaps, is the vibrational totality that remains hidden, waiting to be felt, undescribed. This is the first battle of our journey, between the comfort of the image and the restlessness of the invisible, between attachment to the known and the courage to open ourselves to the vibrational field that Tesla dared to reveal. You can choose to remain attached to forms, to repetitions, to inherited certainties, or you can allow yourself to experience the vibrant emptiness that pulses in the silence between your thoughts. But this choice is not without consequences, because by giving up the image, you also give up the comfort it brings. And this is where the conflict arises. Are we ready to lose certainties in exchange for truth? Imagine Tesla walking alone at night, gazing up at the starry sky. For many, each star is just a distant point of light. For him, it was pure vibration, part of an immense network of which he was also a part. Imagine his loneliness when he realized the world wasn't ready to hear what he had to say. He spoke of electricity without wires, but he also spoke of a God without temples. He spoke of machines, but he also spoke of consciousness. He wasn't just describing inventions. He was describing a new cosmology. And now think about yourself. How many times have you felt distant, empty, searching for answers in books, in authorities, in promises? How many times have you believed that God was unattainable, accessible only to a select few? What if all this is an illusion? What if, as Tesla believed, you are a living antenna, capable of capturing and transmitting the frequencies that connect you directly to the heart of the universe? This isn't a poetic metaphor. It's a radical proposal. Perhaps you've never been distant from God. Perhaps the only distance is the frequency on which you remain. This idea is both liberating and frightening at the same time. It's liberating because it makes the divine accessible to all. It's frightening because it eliminates dependence on any external power. And herein lies the dilemma. If you are responsible for your vibration, then you are also responsible for the reality you create. Are you willing to take on this responsibility? Tesla didn't leave formulas, but he did leave a guideline. Think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Don't seek God in words. Feel Him as movement. Don't look for Him in the future or in the mountains. Recognize Him in the beating of your heart, in the rhythm of your breathing, in the silence between your thoughts. This is the initial provocation, and perhaps it is also the first step toward a transformation that goes beyond religion, beyond science, beyond any system. But if all this is true, if God is vibration, if the universe is consciousness, if every thought is an electrical discharge, then we need to go deeper. We need to understand how this vibration not only manifests within us, but organizes the entirety of existence. This is where the second part of the journey begins, where Tesla's vision becomes even more disturbing and grandiose. Because if everything is vibration, what we call reality may not be as solid as we imagine. What seems fixed may be just invisible movement. What seems definitive may just be resonance. And this is the next provocation. If the stone you hold is not solid, but a dance of vibrating atoms, what else in your life is merely appearance, not essence? Imagine for a moment that every movement you make, every thought that arises in your mind, and every emotion that courses through your body are not just isolated events within you, but notes in a vast, invisible symphony that never stops playing. Nikola Tesla had this vision. For him, the universe was not a stage where objects move like parts of a cold machine, but a vibrational orchestra in which everything, absolutely everything, participates. The stone that seems immobile, the lightning that cuts through the sky, the sound that pierces the silence, and even the simple act of breathing are expressions of frequencies that meet, clash, and harmonize. And if this is true, the inevitable question arises: how are we participating in this music? Are we in tune, or do we live in constant dissonance? When Tesla observed the electrical discharges in his laboratory, he saw more than sparks dancing in the air. He saw a secret language, a universal code written not in words but in pulses of energy. For him, electricity was not just mechanical force. It was a living metaphor for the divine. Each spark was like a syllable of a forgotten language, understandable only to those who dared to listen beyond the obvious. Unlike many scientists of his time, who reduced phenomena to what they could measure, Tesla intuited that the invisible is as real as the visible. And perhaps more important, to understand the depth of this insight, consider a common experience. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately felt the weight of the place? No one needs to say anything. The air feels dense, heavy, and something inside you recoils. This happens in homes where there have been arguments, in tense workplaces, in social gatherings where hostility is masked by smiles. You don't see anything with your eyes, but you feel it. Similarly, has the opposite ever happened? Walking into a place and immediately feeling calm, as if the air were light, as if everything were in order. This perception is an echo of what Tesla called resonance. The invisible field is not fantasy. It shapes our daily experience. Now think about people. There are people who, upon approaching, seem to drain your energy. You talk to them for a few minutes and leave exhausted. Others, on the contrary, seem to ignite something within you. You leave inspired, energized, as if you've breathed fresh air. None of this is coincidence. Tesla would say it all comes down to frequencies interacting. Each person is a note emitting sounds in the invisible field of existence. And when these notes meet, they can produce harmony or noise. This understanding leads us to an uncomfortable reflection. If everything vibrates, if every emotion is a wave, if every thought is a spark, then what do you send out into the world every day? Imagine someone who wakes up already stressed, thinking about financial problems, debts, and responsibilities that seem greater than their own strength. This person gets on the bus or subway, passes dozens of people, goes to work, talks to colleagues, responds to messages. Their vibration, even silent, is already interacting with all these environments. It's as if they carry a radio constantly tuned to a noisy station. Everyone they cross paths feels it, even without realizing it. Now imagine the opposite. Someone who wakes up with gratitude, who takes a deep breath before leaving the house, who remembers something good. This person emits a different frequency, lighter, clearer, more open. The impact is also felt by everyone around them. Tesla saw this reality without needing metaphors. For him, thoughts and emotions were invisible electrical currents that traverse and modify the collective field. This vision is not only mystical, but also resonates even in modern science. Simply observing a particle in an experiment changes its behavior. This forces us to acknowledge that consciousness participates in the construction of what we call reality. But if reality is a symphony, why does it so often sound a tone of anguish, fear, and scarcity? Why do our lives seem so full of noise? Herein lies a conflict Tesla recognized. It's not enough for each human being to be a unique note. We also need to be in tune with the orchestra. When we are disconnected from ourselves, we live like out-of-tune instruments, incapable of generating harmony. Consider everyday examples. Have you ever noticed how, on days when you're in a bad mood, even external events seem to worsen? Traffic becomes unbearable, lines longer, people more irritable. It's as if the world responds to the tone you emit. Similarly, on days when you feel light and confident, even unexpected events seem less threatening. Is it a coincidence? Or are we actually interacting with a vibrational field that responds to the frequencies we sustain? Tesla believed that coincidence doesn't exist. He saw life as a vast electrical grid, where each individual is both transmitter and receiver. Just as a radio can't pick up two stations at once, our minds can't vibrate simultaneously in fear and trust. You choose your tuning, even if unconsciously. If you vibrate in fear, you pick up more fear. If you vibrate in trust, you tune into signals of trust. This choice, invisible but constant, shapes not only individual experience, but also the collective. This idea leads us to another intriguing point. If we all vibrate, then the field we create together is like an invisible cloud covering humanity. Imagine billions of people emitting waves of fear, need, and anger. The result is not just psychological, but vibrational. It's an out-of-tune symphony, a dense mass of sound that keeps consciousness trapped. Tesla perceived this intuitively, and perhaps that's why his ideas were considered so dangerous. Because if we all discovered that we have the power to change the frequency we emit, we would no longer need intermediaries to sense the divine. We wouldn't depend on systems that keep us fearful to survive. But how do you change this frequency? How do you transform noise into harmony? Here's the surprising part. It doesn't take anything extraordinary. The simple act of paying attention is already a form of adjustment. When you take a deep breath amidst the chaos, when you allow yourself to observe your thoughts without judging them, when you choose to respond calmly rather than react angrily, you are already tuning your instrument. Small gestures produce great resonances. A simple example. Imagine yourself stuck in traffic. You have two options. The first is to sink into impatience, complain, and feel the weight of irritation. This choice generates tension, accelerates your heart rate, and makes time seem even slower. The second option is to use that time to reflect, listen to music that brings you peace, and breathe consciously. The traffic remains the same, but your vibration changes, and with it, your experience of the moment. Tesla would say that by choosing the second option, you not only transformed yourself, but also influenced the invisible field around you. Your serenity is a note that softens the collective dissonance. Now ask yourself, how many times in your life have you been in tune without realizing it? How many times have you laughed with someone until you lost track of time? How many times have you been moved by a song? How many times has a sunset made you forget your troubles for a moment? These moments of harmony are not accidents. They are reminders that harmony is always available. The problem is that we spend most of our time stuck in low frequencies, unable to perceive the broader field that sustains us. Tesla believed that living consciously with these frequencies meant living in tune with the essence of creation. It wasn't about believing in distant miracles, but about realizing that every vibrational choice is, in itself, a miracle. When you choose to be grateful instead of complaining, you're already changing the music you emit. When you choose to trust instead of doubt, you're already rewriting your melody. But this view also brings with it a sense of discomfort. If everything vibrates, if everything responds, then there's no excuse for living solely as a victim. We can no longer place blame solely on fate, on a distant God, on external forces. The field responds to what we emit. This awareness may seem heavy at first, because it demands responsibility. But it's also liberating, because it shows that you can choose how you participate in the symphony. And this is where the suspense arises. If reality is this invisible symphony, and all of humanity participates in it, who is conducting the orchestra? Do we play freely, or do we follow a rhythm imposed by forces that want to keep the melody at the tone of fear? This is the question Tesla left implicit. Because if everything is vibration, it's not just about discovering that we are notes, but about understanding how the entire music is being composed. What if everything you call reality were just a reduced, simplified version of something much larger? Imagine that what you touch, feel, and see isn't the essence of things, but merely a surface, like the reflection of a star in a pool of water. Nikola Tesla intuited this in a way that frightened even the boldest thinkers of his time. For him, matter wasn't solid, time wasn't fixed, and consciousness wasn't a product of the brain. Everything was vibration, and vibration was the very fabric of existence. This idea, as abstract as it may seem, has a direct impact on your life. If everything vibrates, then your own mind participates in this cosmic orchestra, influencing and being influenced at every moment. But are we prepared to accept that our daily perception is just a fragment of the greater symphony? Tesla believed that every atom danced in invisible patterns of energy, that every human emotion was a wave reverberating in the universal field, and that every thought was an electrical discharge capable of altering that field. He saw reality as an ocean in constant motion, with each drop influencing the whole. The problem is that we've been taught to believe we're separate, that each of us is an isolated island, that our thoughts are trapped in our heads. What if this belief is the greatest illusion of all? Consider a simple example. Have you ever thought of someone and moments later received a message from that same person, or intensely remembered a distant friend and discovered that they were also thinking of you? Many call this a coincidence, but Tesla didn't believe in coincidences. For him, these experiences reveal the vibrational nature of the mind. When two consciousnesses connect, no distance can separate them. What we call chance is perhaps just the natural synchronicity of fields vibrating at the same frequency. And if this is true, how many other signs do we ignore daily? Could so-called premonitions, vivid dreams, or sudden intuitions be gateways to this greater reality? What if the moments when we feel a bad feeling aren't superstitions, but signals from a subtle energy field trying to warn us? Tesla believed that the human being is not just a physical body, but a living antenna, capable of capturing and transmitting frequencies far beyond what our conventional senses perceive. He compared the brain to a radio receiver. The waves are already in the air, but we only hear them when we're tuned in. This metaphor changes everything. What you call your thoughts may simply be the result of the station your mind is tuned to. How many of your fears and anxieties were truly born within you, and how many were absorbed from the collective field? Here comes a disturbing question. If we are living antennas, who or what controls humanity's dominant frequency? Consider the daily bombardment of information, negative news, fear-mongering, and images of violence. Doesn't this act as an invisible adjustment, keeping billions of people on the same low frequency? Isn't this the most effective way to control consciousness without them even realizing it? Now imagine how your life would change if you took control of your tuning. Tesla believed that the simple act of shifting your internal vibration could alter not only your experience, but also how the universe responds to you. He saw imagination as humankind's most powerful tool. When you imagine, you are already vibrating in the realm of what you desire. That's why he designed his inventions in his mind with such detail that he could spot technical flaws before even building the prototypes. For him, the mental laboratory was as real as the physical one. Have you ever noticed that you do this all the time, even without realizing it? By constantly worrying about something, you imagine it intensely, creating vivid images in your mind. This is also imagination, but used against yourself. It's as if you tuned the radio to a noisy station and still expected to hear music. How many times in your life have you mentally cultivated failure scenarios and then seen them come to fruition? Were they just coincidences or vibrational confirmations of the frequency you maintained? The most uncomfortable thing about this view is that it removes any justification for victimhood. If your mind is both a transmitter and a receiver, then you are not just a product of circumstances, but a co-creator of them. This is frightening because it demands accountability. You can no longer blame chance or external forces alone, but it also liberates you because it places the power to change in your hands. What if we started consciously imagining what we desire instead of what we fear? What would your life be like if, upon waking, instead of thinking about problems, you projected images of solutions, of calm, of confidence? It wouldn't just be cheap optimism. It would be vibrational adjustment. Tesla believed that the universe responds to the frequency you maintain, not the desire you repeat. But here's the paradox. If it's so simple to shift frequency, why do so few do it? Perhaps because we've been trained to believe more in fear than in possibility. From an early age, we're taught that life is a struggle, that the future is uncertain, that we need to protect ourselves. This education generates a collective resonance of distrust and anxiety, and the more people vibrate this way, the denser the collective field becomes, trapping everyone in the same invisible atmosphere. Have you ever noticed how negative news spreads much faster than good news? This isn't by chance. Fear is a frequency that captures attention immediately, like a paralyzing electrical discharge. Tesla knew this. He intuited that emotions like fear, anger, or despair are low-frequency waves, easy to manipulate, easy to amplify. What if the entire structure of society were organized to keep you trapped in these waves? Now imagine if this pattern were to be broken. Imagine millions of people shifting their internal vibration from fear to trust, from lack to abundance, from hatred to compassion. What would the impact be on the collective? Tesla believed this would change not only the lives of each individual, but the very fabric of humanity. The collective would begin to vibrate at a different frequency, generating a completely different reality. But are we ready for this? Do we have the courage to leave the comfort zone of fear and dive into the unknown of trust? This question is a game changer, because, contrary to what we think, living in fear also offers comfort. You don't have to be responsible for what you create. You can blame the circumstances. Living in trust requires maturity. It requires recognizing that every thought and every emotion are notes in a song you are helping to compose. Have you ever noticed how some days everything seems to go wrong in sequence? You wake up late, spill coffee, miss the bus, receive bad news. It seems like a domino effect, but what if it's not just bad luck? What if it's the field responding to the initial frequency you emitted? On the other hand, on other days, everything flows smoothly. You meet unexpected people who help. Solutions appear from where you didn't expect. Even the weather seems to cooperate. Tesla believed this isn't a coincidence, but practical proof of the constant interaction between your vibration and the universal field. Now the question is, how to break a negative cycle and change frequency in real time. Tesla said the key was silence. The same silence in which he sought inspiration for his inventions. When you silence your mind, even for a few minutes, you create space for a new frequency to emerge. Pause is like the interval between musical notes. Without it, there is no melody. Without silence, there is no harmony. But are you willing to silence yourself? Are you willing to stop mentally replaying the same fears and make room for something new? This is the true pattern-breaking process. It's not about escaping the world, but learning to shift your tune even within it, taking a deep breath in traffic, smiling in the face of difficulty, giving thanks amidst chaos. Each of these gestures is more than psychological. It's vibrational. Tesla believed that imagination, combined with silence, is the tool that connects us directly to the creative field of the universe. He didn't expect his inventions to come from outside. He saw them first within, as if they already existed in an invisible place, awaiting only his perception. Could it be that your ideas, your dreams, your intuitions are in this same place, just waiting for you to be silent enough to hear them? This is the provocation of the third stage of our journey. It's not enough to intellectually understand that everything vibrates. You need to begin to perceive in practice how your frequency shapes every detail of your life. Because, if Tesla was right, the reality you live in is not imposed, but chosen, even if unconsciously. The question is, will you continue choosing the same inherited frequencies, or will you dare to adjust your tuning and see where it takes you? What if, in the end, what we call destiny isn't something written in invisible stone, but simply the sum of the frequencies we've maintained up until now? If this is true, then the great revolution depends not on external machines or technological advances, but on the courage to change from within. What if I told you that the life you live every day is sustained by invisible forces you rarely recognize? I'm not just talking about physical laws like gravity or electricity, but something even more subtle, the vibrational frequency that permeates every aspect of existence. Nikola Tesla wasn't content to see the world as a mechanism of cold gears. For him, reality was a symphony in motion, and we, human beings, were at the center of this universal concert. His vision was not merely scientific, it was philosophical, spiritual, and profoundly practical. He understood that man's greatest power lay not in his external tools, but in his ability to perceive and adjust the invisible field that surrounds him. Think about how you feel when you walk into a stadium full of fans. Even before the game starts, you feel the energy vibrating, almost like a physical wave passing through your body. If tens of thousands of people sing together, the air seems to tremble, your heart races and your skin crawls. This isn't a metaphor, it's biology and physics. The human body is extremely sensitive to the collective field. Neuroscience studies show that in environments with strong collective emotion, the heartbeats of different people begin to synchronize. In other words, their internal vibration literally adjusts to the field created by the group. Now imagine what happens when billions of people, every day, emit frequencies of fear. insecurity, or need. The collective field of humanity becomes dense, heavy, almost suffocating. And it is within this field that you try to live, think, and create. The World Health Organization estimates that more than 300 million people suffer from depression, and another 280 million live with anxiety disorders. These numbers aren't just clinical statistics. They're signs that a significant portion of humanity vibrates at low frequencies. With every fear-filled news story, every repeated image of violence, every message of scarcity, an invisible cycle is reinforced. This doesn't mean problems don't exist, but that the constant focus on them further fuels the negative vibrational atmosphere. Ask yourself, is this global state of suffering merely a result of circumstances, or is it also the result of deliberate conditioning? Tesla knew that energy is the basis of everything. He himself said, "If you want to discover the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." But there's a detail few consider. If everything is energy, then it can also be manipulated. And here we come to an uncomfortable point. The same frequencies that can heal can also imprison. Music, for example. Have you ever wondered why some songs seem to touch the soul, while others merely leave a feeling of unease? It's not just a matter of taste. Sound frequencies have a real impact on the human body. Experiments have shown that sounds in certain hertz ranges can reduce anxiety, improve memory, or even accelerate tissue healing. On the other hand, dissonant and repetitive sounds can cause stress, insomnia, and mental confusion. Now imagine how the music, entertainment, and information industries can silently influence the collective vibration. How many of the most popular songs actually raise your frequency? And how many merely reinforce internal noise? A historical example helps understand frequency manipulation. In 1953, the International Organization for Standardization decided that the musical key of A should be tuned to 440 Hz. Before that, many orchestras used tunings of 432 Hz, a frequency considered by many musicians and scholars to be more natural and harmonious with the rhythms of nature. The change may seem insignificant, but it altered the way the entire world experienced music. Some say this decision was not only technical but also political, as 440 Hz would have a more tense and less balanced effect on the human body. Isn't it curious to think that even the foundation of global music may have been shaped to affect how we feel and think? Individual stories also reveal the invisible power of vibrations. A hospital study showed that patients exposed daily to soft music with harmonic vibrational patterns experienced significant reductions in pain and blood pressure. Conversely, in noisy, chaotic environments where noise pollution was constant, stress levels remained high, even when adequate medical care was provided. This means that healing depends not only on medication, but also on the vibrational field in which the body is immersed. Tesla intuited this long before modern science proved it. Now pause and think. How many environments you live in daily are truly vibrationally healthy? Your home, your work, the streets you walk, the content you consume. If the universe responds to the frequency you emit, it's also true that you respond to the frequencies you absorb. How many of your thoughts are truly your own, and how many are echoes of a polluted collective field? Tesla said that human beings could free themselves from social constraints if they learned to control their own vibration. He didn't believe we needed mediators to access the divine. For him, the divine already pulsed within us, in the form of the energy that moves every cell. But there's a problem. From an early age, we're conditioned to believe that power lies outside ourselves. We've been taught to seek answers in institutions, dogmas, and external authorities. This conditioning keeps us at low frequencies because it reinforces the idea that we are small, fragile, and dependent. Could this be the true control mechanism? Stories of people who dared to challenge this conditioning demonstrate the impact a vibrational shift can have. Consider the Tibetan monks who spend hours chanting mantras on high mountains. Studies have shown that during these practices, brain waves enter coherent patterns, similar to the Earth's frequencies measured by the Schumann field, which resonates at around 7.83 Hz. This attunement not only alters the monk's mental state, but also influences the environment. People nearby report a sense of calm, even without participating in the ritual. Could this not be proof that each individual, by changing their vibration, also alters the collective field? Now ask yourself, what if this same principle were applied on a large scale? What would happen if millions of people, simultaneously, chose to vibrate at frequencies of trust, gratitude, and compassion? Wouldn't we be facing an unprecedented social transformation? Statistics show that even small changes in collective behavior have gigantic effects. A study by the HeartMath Institute, for example, demonstrated that the cardiac coherence of groups of people can influence the heart rate variability of nearby individuals, even without direct physical contact. In other words, your vibration can literally affect another person's heart. But if this is possible, why don't we live in a more harmonious world? Perhaps because conscious forces act to keep humanity at a lower frequency. Governments, institutionalized religions, and media systems know that a fearful population is easier to control. Bad news spreads faster than good news, not only because it attracts attention, but because it keeps everyone tuned into the same anxious vibration. The collective field is manipulated by the repetition of images, sounds, and speeches. Have you ever noticed how, in times of global crisis, practically all media outlets talk about the same things, repeating the same numbers, the same warnings, the same fears? This creates a unique frequency that drowns out all other possibilities of perception. Tesla, realizing the depth of this reality, became a threat to the status quo. His ideas weren't just about free energy or wireless transmission. They represented the possibility of humanity's vibrational liberation. Imagine billions of people realizing that they carry within themselves the spark of the divine, that they need no intermediaries to connect to the creative field of the universe. What power system could resist this awareness? But this isn't just a philosophical question, it's practical. Think about your own life. How many times have you reinforced low vibrations without realizing it? By constantly complaining, by repeating patterns of fear, by allowing yourself to be consumed by thoughts of scarcity. Now, how many times have you experienced moments of clarity, peace, and expansion? These moments, however small, are reminders that another frequency has always been available. The challenge is to sustain this attunement, even when the world seems to conspire against it. Now imagine if every day you allowed yourself the freedom to consciously adjust your frequency. I'm not talking about complicated rituals or unattainable mystical practices, but simple gestures, breathing deeply before reacting, giving thanks before complaining, choosing music and words that uplift rather than depress. Small choices, repeated daily, have the power to change not only your life, but the collective field. Tesla believed this so strongly that he saw each human being as part of a larger organism. To him, humanity was like a living body, and each person was a cell. When a cell vibrates healthily, it influences the entire organism. And this is where the question that needs to be asked arises. If we have this power, why do we insist on giving it away? Is it fear of taking responsibility? Is it comfort in blaming others? Or have we become so accustomed to the noise that we no longer recognize the melody? This is the provocation Tesla leaves us. The field is there, vibrating, ready to respond. The choice of attunement is ours. What if the next great revolution isn't technological, but vibrational, not driven by machines, but by consciousnesses that finally remember who they are? This possibility isn't utopian. It begins in the simple moments when you silence your mind, make room for the invisible, and connect with what Tesla called pure energy. The question is, will you have the courage to sustain this frequency when everything around you tries to pull you back into the noise? What if humanity's true battlefield were invisible? What if what's at stake weren't just resources, territories, or ideologies, but something much deeper, the vibrational frequency that sustains our consciousness? This idea may sound abstract at first glance, but when we observe how power structures shape our emotions, our thoughts, and even our most intimate reactions, we realize a hidden pattern. Nikola Tesla, with his vision beyond time, saw this like no one else. For him, the universe was woven of waves and vibrations, and the human being, much more than a physical body, was a transmitter and receiver in this vast energetic ocean. And that's precisely why controlling a person's vibration means controlling their entire reality. Have you ever noticed how bad news seems to multiply faster than good news? How tragedies grace newspaper front pages, dominate television broadcasts, and are endlessly repeated on social media? This is no accident. Fear is the most effective emotion for capturing human attention, because it activates brain regions related to survival. When you're afraid, your perception narrows, you stop questioning and start reacting automatically. Fear breeds vulnerability, and vulnerability is the fertile ground for control. Tesla understood that fear is not just psychological, but also vibrational. It creates low-frequency fields that trap the mind in cycles of anxiety and repetition. Imagine billions of people daily feeding this field with worry, insecurity, and despair. The result is an entire planet enveloped in a dense layer of vibration, difficult to break through. Now think about how this connects to your daily life. How many times have you found yourself scrolling for minutes or even hours through a news feed, even feeling exhausted and drained? How many times have you turned off the television feeling like the world is collapsing? These moments aren't just a waste of time, they're energy drains. Every image, every word, every sound you absorb shapes the vibrational field around you. And the most disturbing thing is that this process is often deliberate. Major communication systems know that keeping the public in a state of constant alert guarantees not only an audience, but also an entire humanity trapped in low frequencies. Tesla saw the mind as a living antenna. For him, the human brain was not the origin of thought, but a receiver and modulator of signals from a universal field. If this is true, what happens when external interference floods this field? Isn't it exactly like tuning a radio to a station filled with noise, where the original message is lost? This is what happens when we are bombarded daily with vibrations of fear, anger, and scarcity. Our inner channel, which could capture elevated and creative inspiration, is lost amid the noise. There is scientific data that reinforces this view. Researchers at the HeartMath Institute have shown that emotions like gratitude and love generate coherent patterns in the heart, which in turn influence the brain and create states of mental clarity. Emotions like frustration and anxiety, on the other hand, generate chaotic patterns which reduce cognitive efficiency and increase fatigue. If specific emotions can generate coherence or chaos in our own bodies, imagine the impact on a collective scale. Now consider, who benefits when billions of people live in chaotic patterns? Real stories show that change is possible, but they also reveal the challenge. During major natural disasters, when entire communities were forced to join forces, researchers noted a temporary drop in local violence rates and even improvements in public health indicators. It's as if the collective vibration, for a few days, shifted from the frequency of individual fear to one of cooperation and solidarity. But as soon as normality returns, control mechanisms kick in again, and the masses are once again pushed into states of anxiety. Isn't it intriguing that only in the face of catastrophe do many people remember the power of vibrational unity? Tesla said, "If you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." But he also understood the danger of this discovery. He knew that those who controlled vibration could control not just machines, but entire societies. This is why so many of his ideas were ridiculed, erased, or kept secret. He represented the possibility of liberation. If everyone knew they could adjust their own frequency, that they could raise their vibration despite external circumstances, no system of power would survive. That's why it was more convenient to paint him as eccentric or lunatic. But how can we break this cycle in our personal lives? It's easy to see how we are affected by the collective, but how can we become points of resonance capable of positively influencing the field around us? The answer lies in simple but consistent choices. Imagine the moment you decide not to react with anger to a provocation, but with calm. This small act alters your internal frequency, and almost imperceptibly, also alters the vibration of the environment. Or when you choose to start your day with gratitude instead of opening your phone to consume negative news. These gestures seem small, but they work like different notes in a melody. A single note can change the tone of the song. Historical examples reinforce this power. Mahatma Gandhi said that, "Strength does not come from physical ability, but from an indomitable will." What he called will can be seen as a sustained frequency. For years, he managed to mobilize millions of people not through violence, but through the persistent vibration of peaceful non-cooperation. This collective force, sustained by discipline and consistency, brought down one of the most powerful empires in history. Isn't this proof enough that individual vibrations, when united, can transform entire societies? Now, turn to your life. How many times have you allowed yourself to believe you were powerless? How many times have you considered yourself merely a victim of circumstances, waiting for something external to change so that your life would change with it? This is the most dangerous vibrational conditioning, believing you can't change your frequency. Tesla would remind us that this is an illusion. Your mind, your heart, your emotions are active transmitters, even when you don't realize it. What you emit is shaping at this very moment the reality around you. There's also a surprising aspect that modern science is beginning to confirm. Research in quantum physics shows that subatomic particles behave differently when observed. This means that consciousness not only registers reality, but participates in it. If even at the microscopic level, the vibration of consciousness alters the behavior of matter, why would it be any different in your everyday life? The question isn't whether you create reality, but what reality you're creating without realizing it. However, there is an internal conflict we must face. Even though we know we have the power to change our frequency, why do we so often choose to remain in states of fear and anxiety? Perhaps because these states have become comfortable. As painful as they may be, they are familiar. The unknown frightens us more than known suffering. This is the most subtle imprisonment, resistance to change. Tesla understood this as a vibrational blockage. For him, the human mind is programmed to resist new frequencies until it is trained to accept them. Therefore, breaking this cycle requires practice, consistency, and above all, courage. Now, imagine what a world would be like where most people consciously practiced vibrational elevation. Imagine cities where empathy was the dominant frequency, schools that taught not only content, but also how to adjust one's own energy field, families that cultivated gratitude daily. This vision may seem distant, but it's not impossible. Every collective transformation begins with the transformation of individuals. The question remains, are you willing to be this different frequency? What if, as Tesla intuited, the greatest secret of the universe lay not in external machines, but in the internal adjustment of vibration? What would happen if you began to live no longer as a passive receiver of the collective field, but as a conscious transmitter, capable of resonating at higher frequencies? Wouldn't this be the true freedom so many have sought throughout history? Perhaps the greatest mystery isn't how the universe works, but why we've forgotten how to interact with it. Tesla gave us clues, left us phrases, experiments, and even metaphors for us to discover for ourselves. Now, it's up to each of us to decide whether we will continue to feed the melody of fear or dare to play a different note. And this is where the inevitable question arises. If reality can be altered by the vibration we sustain, who truly writes the future of humanity? The power structures that manipulate frequencies to maintain control, or each individual who consciously chooses to vibrate above them? This is the choice no system can make for you. What if the greatest discovery of your life wasn't in something you needed to seek, but in something you needed to remember? This is perhaps the most disturbing, and at the same time, most liberating revelation of all, that you have never been separated from the energy you call divine, from the force Tesla described as pure vibration. You don't need intermediaries to feel it. You don't need complex rituals to access it. You don't need permission to experience it. It is pulsing within you at this very moment, awaiting only your decision to acknowledge it. The world we live in has been carefully shaped so that we would forget this, but forgetting is not the same as losing. And remembering is the most revolutionary act you can commit. Tesla saw humanity as a vast network of transmitters and receivers. Every emotion, every thought, every gesture was, for him, a frequency being sent to the invisible field that sustains everything. This means that you are not just an observer of reality, but an active participant in its creation. When you think about fear, you reinforce the field of fear. When you think about gratitude, you strengthen the vibration of abundance. It seems simple, but this is the most powerful law that governs not only your individual life, but also the collective destiny of humanity. The problem is that we have been conditioned to believe that we have no power, and this is the greatest deception. Now you may be wondering, how can we turn this understanding into practical action? How can we stop just hearing these words and start living them in a way that impacts every area of our lives? The answer lies in a simple yet profound plan that can be applied by anyone, regardless of their location. Think of it as a path inspired by Tesla's vision, a roadmap that requires not blind belief, but conscious practice. The first step is presence. Most people live trapped in the past or anxious about the future, but vibration can only be felt in the now. Take a few minutes each day to practice what Tesla would call attunement. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and notice your body. Feel the air coming in and out. Feel your heart beating. Don't try to control anything, just be. This simple practice, repeated consistently, will begin to reduce the noise of the mind and open space to perceive more subtle frequencies. The second step is non-judgmental observation. You've been trained to believe that thoughts and emotions define who you are, but in reality, they're just temporary waves that pass through you. When you feel fear, don't fight it. When you feel anger, don't blame yourself. Just observe. Tell yourself, this is a temporary frequency. By doing this, you stop being a victim of the flow and start becoming the conductor, choosing what will resonate. The third step is consciously choosing your frequency. If everything is vibration, the reality you experience is a reflection of the frequencies you sustain. So ask yourself several times a day, what frequency am I feeding right now? If it's fear, sadness, or despair, take a deep breath and make a change. Remember something you're grateful for, visualize a happy memory, or simply feel the beauty of a detail around you. A change in state is a change in frequency, and when repeated, it begins to create a new reality. The fourth step is creative imagination. Tesla was a master at this. Before building any invention, he visualized it in his mind with such clear detail that he could already test it internally. You can apply the same principle to your life. Spend a few minutes each day imagining the reality you want to live, not as a distant dream, but as something present. See yourself living in peace, abundance, and balance. The more intensely you feel, the more real this vibration will be, and vibration attracts resonance. The fifth step is vibrational hygiene. Just as we care for our bodies by avoiding harmful foods, we need to care for our energy field by avoiding information and environments that drain us. Ask yourself, does what I consume every day uplift or weaken me? This applies to news, music, conversations, places, and even repetitive thoughts. It's not about escaping the world, but about creating a healthy balance. For every negative stimulus, feed yourself something positive, inspiring, that reinforces your high frequency. The sixth step is internal coherence. Many people say they want peace, but they constantly harbor arguments. They want prosperity, but harbor beliefs of scarcity. They want love, but act with indifference. This incoherence creates noise in the vibrational field. To change this, align your intentions, emotions, and actions. Ask yourself, is what I do in harmony with what I think and feel? If the answer is no, make small adjustments until there is congruence. Coherence is what transforms intention into creative force. The seventh and final step is inner silence. This is where transformation takes hold. Silence is the matrix where all frequencies originate. Tesla sought this space on his long solitary walks, where he received world-changing insights. Create moments of silence in your routine. It could be through meditation, contemplative prayer, or simply the stillness of watching a sunset. In silence, you access the field from which everything arises. And in this field, you remember who you truly are. You might be thinking, but that seems difficult to maintain. It's true, it requires discipline, but not perfection. You don't have to practice every step flawlessly every day. You just need to start. A small, consistently repeated change alters your frequency, and over time completely changes your reality. The key is consistency, not speed. Now, allow yourself to imagine for a moment. What would your life be like if you applied these steps, not as occasional exercises, but as a lifestyle? Imagine waking up every day aware of your vibration, able to recognize and adjust your internal state. Imagine relationships built on frequencies of love and respect, decisions made with clarity rather than desperation, opportunities arising because your vibration began to attract higher resonances. This is not fantasy. It is vibrational science applied to everyday life, and the impact goes beyond you. Every time you raise your frequency, you influence those around you. Studies show that the human heart field can affect other bodies up to 3 meters away. Now imagine an entire group of people consciously practicing gratitude and compassion. The collective field begins to transform, and when this happens, all of humanity benefits. You are not just an isolated piece. You are an active cell in the body of humanity. When your frequency changes, the whole feels it. It's natural to feel doubtful. You might wonder if this really works, if it's possible to change something so profoundly with just internal practices. But remember, everything you experience today was created by the sum of the frequencies you've sustained up until now. And if your current reality was created, it can also be recreated. Responsibility can be scary, but it's also liberating, because it means you have more power than you've been taught to believe. Tesla didn't leave ready-made spiritual formulas, but he did leave a silent invitation to think of energy, frequency, and vibration as universal keys. This is the legacy you can choose to apply now, not as a distant theory, but as a living practice. The future isn't written in stone. It vibrates in the choices you make right now. And here's the most important point. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Don't wait for more time, more money, or more peace of mind to start. Because every day you put it off is a day you continue feeding the same frequency you want to change. Start today, even if imperfectly. Breathe with presence. Observe without judgment. Choose a higher frequency. Imagine a different future. Protect your energy. Live coherently. Cultivate silence. Start over whenever you forget. This is how you transform a life. This is how you transform a world. And now I want to speak directly to you who have followed along this far. If these words touched something within you, if they awakened a memory or a desire to live differently, don't let this moment pass by as if it were just another video. Turn it into action. Subscribe to this channel to continue receiving content that reinforces this journey. Like this video to strengthen this community of resonance that grows every day. And above all, share your experience in the comments. It can be an anonymous comment, it can be just a simple sentence. What did you feel? What did you notice? What step are you willing to take starting today? Your voice can be the impulse that inspires another person to change their own frequency. And this is how we create an invisible network, a field of conscious vibration that expands with every choice, every gesture, every word. Don't underestimate the power of a comment, a share, a testimony, because transformation is never just individual. It reverberates like waves that cross the ocean, reaching shores you may never see. Take a deep breath, feel the silence for a moment, and remember, you have never been separate from the energy you seek. It is within you, always has been. Everything is energy, everything is frequency, everything is vibration. The universe is a living symphony, and now it's your turn to choose which melody to play.